All right, welcome back, welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We hope you are safe and sound wherever in the world you are. Welcome to the College Success Mastery Virtual Summit 2020. I'm Joey Ban from Edu Experts, your host at this summit. This is the second session for today, and well, we see some participants still streaming in. But let's get going. Yeah. So I've always been fascinated with the Dutch universities. Netherlands is considered a small country, but its universities are very well ranked in the world rankings. In this session, Glenn Scoggins is going to walk us through the Dutch education system and how things work in the land of the tulips. Glenn has been the college admissions counselor at Sanmore International School in Yokohama, Japan since 2005, advising students on admissions to universities in many countries around the world. In addition to his counseling work, he has also taught Japanese history for over 40 years. His particular interests include smaller universities and colleges in the Netherlands, Scotland, and Eastern Canada, many of which are not well known in Asia. He has also followed the steep rise of English-taught degree programs at Japanese universities over the last 15 years and is familiar with all the universities that offer them. In his session, Glenn will share his knowledge about the Dutch education system and how students can benefit from high-quality education at an affordable cost. Without further ado, let's welcome Glenn Scoggins onto our summit. Hi Glenn, hi, how are you?
Hello, Joey.
Hi. Thank you and welcome to the summit.
Thank you so much for organizing this, and I'm delighted to see that so many people have tuned in.
No problem. So I'll pass the session over to you and I'll be back later for the question and answer session, right, after your presentation.
Thank you. And thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I'll just say a few more words about my own background and how I became interested in the Netherlands. I've been in Japan for over 40 years. I'm at a school which offers the IB diploma program, and I've been teaching IB history since we began that in 1985. I've also been the college admissions counselor for the last 15 years. Over the space of that time, I was looking for as many options for my students as possible. We are a very small school, but we have quite a diverse population with 39 nationalities, and about 25% of our students, about 1/4, are dual citizens. So as the political climate in the United States became more and more divisive and polarized, and as the educational options around the world increased, I began to be a bit dissatisfied by the assumption amongst my students and their parents that the United States would be the first choice for higher education. Therefore, I began looking at not just Britain or Australia, but also at many of the universities in Canada, and as Joey pointed out, some of the ones that are not as well known in Eastern and Atlantic Canada, because most students from Asia tend to focus on Vancouver and the West Coast. I also began to get interested in the Netherlands, and the reason for this was that many of the British families at my school, even while Britain was still a member of the EU, found that because they had been living outside of Britain and not paying taxes inside the country, that they would be treated as international students. Their students would be treated as international students for the purpose of tuition at British universities, and yet they would still have a much better option in the Netherlands. So I thought, if that's something that I should find out more about. So I've been researching it, passing it on to my students, and they, I think, are also very much well aware of this. So although still the largest number of applications are in the US, in Japan, in Canada, and in Britain, but the Netherlands is increasing in popularity every year. In 2020, the 38 students in grade 12, as I say, it's a small school, completed 240 applications to 140 universities in 14 different countries. So I think I have been successful at introducing many different options to them. This fall, despite our unsettled situation right now, they'll matriculate in 9 of those countries. And so I think I can say that even from the vantage point of a small school in Yokohama, we've been able to look around the world at English taught um, 4-year and 3-year degree programs at universities in a variety of countries. So why the Netherlands? Well, of course, you all know the cliches based on travelogues and stereotypes. Tulips, of course, windmills, canals, bicycles, wooden shoes, cheese, all of those are accurate. If you go to the Netherlands, you'll see windmills, you'll see lots of bicycles, you can buy lots of cheese. Wooden shoes maybe are not everyday footwear. It's a flat country. A lot of it is below sea level. The old saying goes that God created all of the rest of the world in 6 days, but the Dutch built Holland because so much of it was reclaimed from the North Sea. It's a rainy, wet country. It has the tallest, on average, men and women in the world, and perhaps that's a function of the very prosperous dairy industry and all that milk and cheese they eat. It also has world-class corporations, especially for a country that is relatively small, with only 15 million people. Think of these companies that are tops in their field. The Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company, one of the largest petroleum companies in the world, is headquartered in Amsterdam. Banking, such as ING and Exor Finance, Philips, which is well known for consumer electronics and many other fields, Unilever, Heineken beer, of course. You may associate Airbus with Britain and France, but it's actually headquartered in the Netherlands. And the alliance between Nissan and Renault. Nissan is headquartered in Yokohama, and of course Renault is a French company, but their alliance actually is based in the Netherlands. So there's great opportunities for students to do internships and to learn a great deal about the world of economics and finance. The Hague is the center for many international organizations, including the International Criminal Court and the United Nations World Court of Justice, and it's an international center for peace studies as well. The Netherlands is famous for its liberal views, its progressive government policies, its universal health care, reliable transportation. In Japan, I think we can be proud of our transportation system, but when I traveled around the Netherlands, I found that the trains there and in the cities, the subways, buses, streetcars are every bit up to Japanese standards. Decriminalized marijuana and prostitution are famous, but that is, of course, only what tourists tend to seek out. The Dutch are not constantly high. Otherwise, how could they be such a prosperous country? The Dutch may not seem that happy, but according to the World Happiness Report, they're ranked in the top 10 of countries, along with Denmark and Bhutan and places that are famous for their happy people. One thing that's very important, I think, especially for students coming from Asian countries, is that 95% of adults speak fluent English. It has the highest level of English proficiency of any country in the world where English is not the native language. A friend of mine who's lived in the Netherlands for quite some time says that the hardest thing that he could do after putting in all the effort of learning Dutch is having a conversation in Dutch with his Dutch friends because they would automatically switch to English. So this helps to explain why the Netherlands is a pioneer in English medium education. The Netherlands has an excellent university system. The oldest university dates from 1575. There are universities in all of the major cities and in smaller towns as well, but they were taught entirely in Dutch until 1997. All of the Dutch universities are ranked in the top 350 of the QS rankings. I'm not a big fan of rankings, but I know that many people are. But the Netherlands faces the same demographic situation that Japan and South Korea, many East Asian countries, and most European countries face. A low birth rate, a decreasing number of 18-year-olds, if Dutch universities continued to teach only in Dutch and relied for their enrollment only on students from the Netherlands and the adjoining Dutch-speaking areas of Belgium, then they would go extinct. They would have to close down. And this is a problem faced by many countries, and Japan certainly faces this problem right now as well, with the oldest average population in the world. Now, there are more than 210 study programs taught in English in the Netherlands. They make up roughly half of all the university courses in the Netherlands. Let me explain a little bit about the higher education system in the Netherlands. Notice that I'm not using the word Holland. Holland is often used as a synonym for the Netherlands, but that's sort of like referring to England when in reality you should be speaking of Britain or the United Kingdom. The two largest provinces of the Netherlands are called North Holland and South Holland, and they make up the majority of the population, but there's much more to the Netherlands than Holland, just as there's much more to the United Kingdom than England. There are three types of Dutch universities. Research universities, which are all world-class. There are a total of 13 of them. They are in the major cities as well as some smaller towns. And ones that you may have heard of are the University of Amsterdam, Erasmus University Rotterdam, named after the most famous figure of the Enlightenment in the Renaissance, the Leiden University, with campuses also in The Hague, which is very nearby, and Leiden University is the oldest, founded in 1575. The University of Maastricht, which is on the border of Belgium and Germany in the southeastern corner of the country. The University of Groningen, which is far to the north of the Netherlands and closer to Germany. And the University of Utrecht, which is more or less in the very center of the country. I'm not mentioning all of them, but there are 13 research universities, and all but one have English courses. The only one that doesn't is the Broadcast University, University of the Air, which is designed for mature students or non-traditional students. So 12 of the research universities have English courses. They, for undergraduates, the great majority of the courses last 3 years, culminating in a BA, a BSc, or an LLB, an undergraduate law degree. It's very, very common for Dutch students to continue on for higher education and to go beyond the 3-year bachelor's program. Now, at a research university, if you are familiar with the British system, or rather I should say the system in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, excluding Scotland, it's very similar at Dutch research universities. You decide what subject you want to study. You apply in that subject only. You are accepted if you meet the minimum admissions criteria for that subject at that university. And then that's all you study for 3 years. In that sense, it is similar to the British system. In the first year, there are quite large class sizes, but then these quickly develop into much smaller seminars, and this would also be similar to the British system. Usually they are not residential. There are some exceptions, but most of the large research universities expect that students will find their own accommodation, and of course many of them are coming from home. And indeed the transportation system is so efficient that it could be possible to live in one city and go to university in another. Amongst the university courses that you could apply for at these research universities are numerus fixus courses. These have limited numbers. Numerus fixus means a fixed number. Their application deadlines are earlier. They are more competitive. That means that once they fill up the numerus fixus, the fixed number of qualified applicants, then they are closed. However, the majority of the courses are open to all applicants who meet the minimum admissions criteria. And this is quite different from Britain, or indeed most of the other English-speaking countries that you're familiar with. These differ according to each university and each subject, so I'm not going to try to generalize about them. And I do recommend for everyone to go to the websites of the individual universities, and I will be referring at the end of my speech to the specific websites, and Joey has promised to send them all to you. So there's no reason for you to take notes or even to remember what I'm saying. You will get all of the notes of my speech, including all of the websites and some books that I will recommend to you for further reading. Now, the second category are called Universities of Applied Science. These are universities. They are at the same level of, let's say, prestige as the research universities. There are a total of 41. They are scattered throughout the country in the large cities as well as many smaller towns. The larger ones have some English courses, but the English courses there are not as widespread as they would be at the research universities. They're usually 4 years because they include time spent in industry, work experience, internships that are full-time employment. They are practical, vocational, they're hands-on education, and that's why they have smaller class sizes. You're learning something by doing it. They have less competitive admission, but very good job placement. If you are interested in learning how to do something hands-on, then this would be a good place to go. They don't have as many non-Dutch applicants, and then most of the courses are taught in Dutch. I should point out that the Netherlands as a whole is a very multicultural place. Not only Dutch citizens, many of whom have their ethnic origins in Indonesia or Suriname or the Caribbean because of the former Dutch colonies, but also the Netherlands has a very high percentage of people living in the country who are not Dutch citizens, who are living there in some cases for the long term. And this would be reflected in the students that go to university as well. So many of the students at the University of Applied Sciences would not be your typical tall, fair-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Dutch people, but they are still Dutch anyway. Now, the third category, and the one that I find most interesting, and the one that I wanted to sort of specialize in, are university colleges. There are a total of 9. They are each affiliated with one of the major research universities. All courses are taught in English. They have all of the advantages of the many research laboratories, libraries, all of the advantages that are associated with a major university. However, they are all quite small. They are based on the liberal arts model, what you might expect to find, for example, in New England or some parts of the northeastern or midwestern United States. I could mention colleges like Amherst, Williams, Swarthmore, Bryn Mawr, Smith, Mount Holyoke, and indeed many of the smaller universities in the Atlantic provinces of Canada that predate the nationalization of Canadian universities. They are holistic. They are less specialized. There are small class sizes. The average class size differs according to the institution between 12 and 25, depending on the campus. All but one are completely residential. That means that at least for the first year, and in many cases for all 3 years, you live right on campus. So that means that you have an education that is 24/7. You are constantly interacting with your classmates, with your professors, and therefore you're surrounded by your education, very much in the same model as the residential, small, undergraduate-focused liberal arts colleges in other countries. These began in 1997, and they are very self-consciously based on the most famous and successful residential undergraduate liberal arts colleges of the northeastern United States. The total intake, depending upon the campus, is between 100 at the smallest campus to 300 per year. Thus, the total undergraduate population is 300 to 900. The campus in the outskirts of Amsterdam is the largest, 900. One of the smallest that I visited is in the southwestern corner of the Netherlands in a small city called Middelburg. and it's affiliated with the University of Utrecht, but it's a standalone university college. And in every case, the education that you would get there is in English. It is multicultural, international, in terms of both the students and the professors. Obviously, you have the opportunity to learn Dutch, but there is no immediate need, since so many Dutch adults above the age of 15 can speak very fluent English. Now, the university colleges are more competitive. They have a minimum GPA, which differs according to each institution. If you are an IB diploma candidate, then that is really, that's a full, you will have fulfilled the admissions criteria by a certain diploma score, and this differs from one campus to the other. But if you are at a school that does not follow the IB diploma program, if you have a certain GPA, if you have done, for example, A-level courses or American AP courses, if you have a certain number of APs, if you have a certain number of A-levels, then those would also be considered as admissions criteria. And the proof of English proficiency, which of course is a very important part of the admissions criteria for all English taught curricula that recruit internationally, would be satisfied with TOEFL or IELTS, or simply by completing the IB diploma taught in English. Let me explain a bit about the Dutch philosophy of education. This is something quite unique to the Netherlands. I am a stickler for precise usage. When I say unique, I mean there is no other country in the world with this philosophy. Higher education is a basic human right. Even though the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights says that all humans are born with the right to an education, in the Netherlands, this is taken quite literally as the right to have the opportunity to enter higher education as well, not simply the minimum basic compulsory education. All human beings deserve the opportunity to begin a university course. Therefore, admission is, for the most part, wide open. This is not true of the university colleges or of the numerus fixus courses at the research universities, but looking at the majority of courses at the research universities or the universities of applied science, the admission is much less competitive compared to universities of similar reputation in, say, the US, Britain, Canada, many other countries. However, and here's the catch, once admitted, students must study very hard. They are tested regularly, especially in the first year. They must earn grades up to a prescribed standard. This is not a secret. All of the students know, even before they enter, exactly what they have to do to remain in the course. After a semester or after a year, or in some cases, even in a shorter timeline than that, in a very serious case, all students receive binding study advice. Now, this word advice is ironic. Students cannot accept or reject it. It is binding. Depending on their academic progress so far, they may be required to change their plans, or in a very serious case, they may be required to drop out. Basically, you're out of here, you're kicked out. All students have the right to begin higher education. That doesn't mean that they all automatically have the right to progress and graduate. And so this is something that I think all students applying from anywhere in the world need to pay attention to, that although it may appear that admission is much easier than to similarly famous universities in other parts of the world, once you get in, you don't have a free ride. You're going to have to study very, very hard. Now, the application process. Deadlines differ from one institution to another. Generally, though, there is a broad window. In some cases, the window opens as early as September of the previous year. Therefore, if you are currently in your final year of secondary education, the equivalent of grade 12 in many systems, or if you are in the year where you would be taking your IB exams or A-levels, then now it could be the beginning of the application window. Sometimes the window closes as early as January. And for the numerus fixus programs, that's often the case. However, in other cases, it is possible to apply as late as July. Now, some of them would be full up, and so I certainly wouldn't advise that. Many of them have rolling admission, which means the earlier you apply, the earlier you could be accepted if you meet the minimum admissions criteria. The deadline for the more competitive spots tends to be earlier, and those are often in January. However, I'm not going to try to generalize about that. Each institution has its own deadline system. Some institutions accept students to begin in February. The majority, though, begin in September. So that would be, if you are in your final year of secondary education, it would be September 2021. Admission requirements differ from one institution to another. Typically, they might include one of the following for a student applying from overseas: an IB diploma, 3 good A-level results, a US high school diploma or the equivalent with 3 to 4 AP scores, that is to say, AP scores in 3 to 4 subjects. Students should invest the deadlines and requirements for each university separately. There is a website that I will provide for you, and Joey will send you, and it is one-stop shopping. That means you can find all of the universities, the 13 research universities, the universities of applied science, and the 9 university colleges, all from the same website. Costs. I know this is a question that the parents are going to be very interested in. For students who are not citizens of a country in the EU or the EEA, that's the European Economic Area, and it's essentially the EU plus Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland. So if you're not a European, and of course Britain is in the process of dropping out. So if you're not a citizen, and I assume that many of the listeners to this program are not citizens of a European country, the range of annual tuition costs in a recent year was 6,000 euros up to 15,000 euros. Courses in science, technology, and especially medicine, like everywhere, tend to be on the higher side. Due to their smaller enrollment, the university colleges have higher tuition, ranging in a recent year from 9,000 euros up to 13,000 euros. Keep in mind this is for 3 years, and that whereas for a university in the US or Canada or in Scotland or many other systems, you'd be paying for 4 years. The average cost of living for a student in the Netherlands is estimated to be about 900 euros per month. It's going to be a little more expensive in a big city like Amsterdam. It's going to be a little bit less expensive in a smaller town. I will point out that in Maastricht, which is at the southeastern corner of the country, and if you look at a map of the Netherlands, and I will hold one up, you'll notice that there is this strange little tail of the Netherlands. That's where Maastricht is located. And it's quite possible to live in Belgium, which has a lower cost of living, or Germany, where the cost of living is slightly lower, and to commute to the university in Maastricht. That probably wouldn't be practical in other areas of the Netherlands. But since the transportation is so reliable, you could live in a town that has a slightly lower cost of living and commute to Amsterdam or a place with a rather higher cost of living. Non-EU citizens can work at part-time jobs with some restrictions. And of course, in all cases, just common sense would tell you that you're there as a student. That's your main job. And making a little extra money at a part-time job should be an adjunct, not your main goal. All students, regardless of citizenship, receive standard benefits from the Dutch government. The universal health care is a little bit more complicated than I'll go into here, but the Dutch system is like many European systems. The health care is provided regardless of citizenship, and so that's something you should definitely investigate. One rather simple benefit that I can point out is that all students, regardless of citizenship, get 40% off on all transportation. That means long distance trains, commuter trains, subways, streetcars, and all urban transportation. Now, Joey pointed out that it's very important for me to explain the adjustment to Dutch culture. And this is something that I have a great deal of interest in, especially for students coming from East and Southeast Asia. So I don't want to overgeneralize about East Asian culture. I live in Japan, but I know that, that Singapore and the Philippines, and Indonesia, and Malaysia, Mongolia, and of course, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, they're all different cultures. And I wouldn't say that they all have a Japanese culture at all. But there are, I think, a certain traits that might be similar amongst families and students in Eastern Asia. So let me say a few words about Dutch culture. Adjustment to Dutch culture is likely to be a big challenge. Now, keep in mind that when you go to a Dutch university, perhaps as many as 1/4 of the other students there are not Dutch. And at a Dutch university college, it's more likely to be half or 3/4 are not going to be Dutch. So you're going to be rubbing shoulders with students from all over the world, or certainly all over Europe. However, let's just focus on Dutch culture. Dutch people have a well-earned reputation for being open, honest, direct, blunt. If you ask them a question, they will not sugarcoat the answer. They will give you exactly what they think. To use a cliche, they will call a spade a spade. They don't hide their opinions in order to be polite. Now, I come from a country in Japan where everybody hides their opinions in order to be polite, and this is a bit frustrating sometimes. I find Dutch directness very refreshing, but also you have to be prepared for an honest answer. They respect everybody else's right to have a different opinion as well. Students from East and Southeast Asia may find Dutch people a bit too blunt and individualistic. In university classes, every student must speak up and offer active participation. They are encouraged to challenge each other, to contradict each other, and to contradict the professor. I would say that that would be a challenge for my students coming from a Japanese culture, even though they are of many different nationalities. I would suspect that many of the students from East and Southeast Asia would be reluctant to contradict the teacher. However, I think that if you go to any Western culture, you're going to be expected to offer active class participation. If you don't, you're not getting the most out of your education. And the reputation, the stereotype for Asian students, and I think this is especially true of Japanese students, is that they take notes very diligently, they listen very carefully, they follow all the directions, but they don't often raise their hands to offer an opinion, to answer a question, and certainly not to contradict the teacher. That's a steep learning curve, but I think it'll be a very important aspect of getting the most out of an education in Western culture. And Dutch culture might be considered to be one of the extremes of Western culture. Now, the Dutch, including students and other young people, are often close to their families. And this may come as a shock, especially for rebellious adolescents and teenagers who are sick of their suffocating family. But in a way, it's often very refreshing. Family ties are very close in Asia. The family is the basic unit of society. That's something that's also true in the Netherlands. Because it's so easy to go home on the weekends, even if you're living at a university, the Dutch often visit their parents and other family members for weekends, for holidays, and students from Asia who make friends may often find themselves invited to join these family gatherings. And so I don't want to give the impression that Dutch culture is cold. When I say that the Netherlands is a wet country, I mean it in both senses. It rains a lot. It's a soggy country, but it's also wet in the sense of human relationships. It's wet and warm in that way. Now, the drinking age is 18 in the Netherlands, as it is in most parts of Europe. And that means that students do drink, and there is an alcohol culture on campus and off campus. However, excessive alcohol abuse, alcoholism, public intoxication is rare in the Netherlands. That's a part of Dutch culture. So drinking moderately, but not to excess. My personal explanation for this is that the Dutch glasses are so small. And that may have nothing to do with it. If you drink a lot of small beer glasses, you can still get drunk. Smoking tobacco is less common. That's part of a trend throughout Europe and especially amongst college students. Cigarettes are very heavily taxed. The average cost of a pack of 20 cigarettes in the Netherlands is over $8 US. That's a bit less than Singapore, but it's about double the cost in Japan. It's 4 times that of the cost in the Philippines. It's certainly higher than in Malaysia. So smoking is unpopular. It's highly restricted and it's expensive. The Netherlands is located in the very heart of Northwestern Europe. It has reliable transportation links, including the Eurostar train through the Eurotunnel to London via Brussels and connections to Paris. And we're talking about just a few hours to get to any of those capitals. It's not difficult or time-consuming to travel around Europe. I would say that train travel is more expensive for someone my age, but if you are a student, there are great student discounts, and it is very common for university students to travel all around Northwestern Europe, all parts of Western Europe, and that makes it economical as well in terms of cost, but also in terms of time. Especially compared to East and Southeast Asia, international travel can be a major part of student life and not wait until the long vacations, but even on the weekends. And it's one of the great advantages of university life in Europe. Now, everything that I said, of course, is contingent on our current pandemic situation. Right now, there are travel restrictions throughout Europe and, of course, travel restrictions throughout Asia. And this will continue. It will depend upon the decisions made by individual governments. And so there's nothing we can do about that. And the universities undoubtedly would be very eager for those restrictions to be lifted, but it's up to the governments of each country. It may be a scientific or medical decision, or it may be a political decision, or a mixture of both. When you mix science and politics, though, you get politics. What we hope, of course, is that border checks will no longer be necessary, that there'll be a safe and effective vaccine. And if that's the case, once you are in the EU, then border checks to most EU member countries are no longer needed. That means that even if you are not a European citizen, if you come from Malaysia or Singapore or Mongolia or Hong Kong, once you are a resident of the Netherlands, you won't face border checks going into Germany or Belgium or France or Luxembourg or the other countries within the Schengen agreement. Now, you will face border checks going into Britain, which is not a member of Schengen, but you can travel quite freely, almost as if it's the same country. And that's very exotic for people from Asia, where you constantly have to show your passport at every border. Now, I'm going to point out a couple of useful websites, and like I said, you don't have to write these down. Joey is going to send these all to you later. Nuffic is an independent nonprofit organization. I have a really orange bookmark here from Nuffic, studyinholland.nl. It's an independent nonprofit which provides an overview of all English taught study programs. This includes the details of all admission requirements, deadlines, costs, everything. So one-stop shopping, that's Nuffic. Then StudyLink is the Dutch Ministry of Education website. It's one comprehensive website in English and in Dutch. So it covers everything that's in Nuffic, plus all of the Dutch taught programs. And it is the application portal for all universities, for all higher education, all 3 types of higher education. This is comparable to UCAS in that if you're applying to any of the 120 or 30 universities in Britain, you would do so through UCAS. The same would be true for StudyLink to apply to any of the, I believe the total is 63 different institutions of higher education in the Netherlands. There's one website for tuition fees, study grants, and assessments of academic credentials. And that's particularly helpful if you attend a school which is not run according to, it doesn't have the IB diploma or is not accredited by any of the major worldwide accrediting organizations such as CIS. If it's run according to the local education system, then that might not be familiar in the Netherlands, but duo.nl can evaluate academic credentials. Study Finder, you can go here to search out a particular university course. Grant Finder includes all available scholarships, including some for non-Dutch students, but I would point out that it's much more likely that the scholarships are much more frequent for Dutch citizens. And yet, because the cost of the universities is low to begin with, you can sort of assume that everybody's getting a scholarship. New to Holland.nl. This will help students and especially parents learn which government programs are designed to help them live in the Netherlands. For example, the medical healthcare system, how to find a guarantor for an off-campus apartment, all of the nuts and bolts of actually living in the Netherlands. Now, if you are applying to a university college, you wouldn't have to worry about that. You'll live on campus, and the university college will provide your accommodations. That's true also of one of the research universities, but for all of the others, you'd have to find your own apartment, and the university will help you, of course, and getting a guarantor is a requirement, but not one that is very difficult to carry out. Then there's also careerinholland.nl. What jobs will await those who graduate 3 years from now? So if you graduate in 2024, and we hope we're all living in a post-corona world, then what kind of job can you look forward to? Now, I have 4 books to recommend to you, and all of the details of these are on the information that Joey will send. One of them is a pamphlet, which is called University Colleges in the Netherlands. This is published by Erasmus University Rotterdam. It's available as a PDF, and it explains all about the 9 university colleges. Joey will send you the link, and you can simply download it and print it out if you want to. Now, there are 3 books that I recommend. The one that is by far the most useful for parents and students who are interested in universities in the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe is College Beyond the States, European Schools That Will Change Your Life Without Breaking the Bank by Jennifer Wiemont. Jennifer Wiemont is my idol. I think she's wonderful. And she's one of the presenters of College Success Mastery Virtual Summit. Congratulations, Joey, for getting her to be a presenter. She presented yesterday afternoon with the title Experiencing Europe, Life-Changing Opportunities at an Affordable Price. And her book contains information not just about the universities that she spotlighted, but about a number across Europe, including Germany, Estonia, France, Denmark, Belgium, Italy, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that is a wonderful book. It may even be possible, if you missed Jennifer's presentation yesterday, to contact Joey and get the recording of it. I have learned an enormous amount from her book. She's got a great website. I shamelessly stole material from her book. 5 of the 17 chapters deal with Dutch universities, including Erasmus University Rotterdam, Leiden University, Groningen University, and The Hague University of Applied Science. Another really interesting book about Dutch culture, Why the Dutch Are Different, a journey into the hidden heart of the Netherlands by Ben Coates, a British writer who's lived in the Netherlands for many, many years, works there for an NPO, is married to a Dutch woman. It's an excellent introduction to Dutch culture, contrasting it not only with Britain, but with other countries that might be familiar to you. And the final book that I'm going to recommend is a worldwide bestseller called The Culture Map, Decoding How People Think, Lead, and Get Things Done Across Cultures. It's written by Aaron Meyer, who's a professor at the well-known business school INSEAD in France. It is an incisive analysis and comparison of national cultures, especially their unspoken rules and assumptions. It's written from a business standpoint, but it's also very helpful to understand why students from East and Southeast Asia might find the adjustment to life in the Netherlands a challenge, and then how to be successful in overcoming that challenge. It includes easily understood graphs and diagrams showing the Dutch culture, usually at one extreme, and the cultures of East Asia, especially Japan, at the opposite extreme. It explained to me why I love to visit the Netherlands, but as somebody who's lived in Japan my entire adult life, I realized that I could never possibly adjust to living in the Netherlands. So those are my book recommendations as well. So Joey, I hope I haven't gone over time, but now that's the end of my presentation. So, and I bet we've got lots of questions, so I'd be very happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you. And thank you for all the resources that you've shared. I'll make sure to send them out to the audience here. Oh, we have a question in the chat box. What do you think about an international student's chance of being employable, either in Netherlands or Europe, upon their graduation from the Netherlands?
Well, Ibarz, thank you very much. And I have to say that he's the reason that I'm here. He and Joey are old friends, and he introduced me to her, which was a great favor. Thank you very much. And your very kind words. Ibarz is my colleague at another international school in Yokohama, and he's a great guy. Well, the Netherlands has an economy that has done better than most in Europe, but of course there is a worldwide recession. And this year has just been an absolute disaster. China has flatlined after years and years of 7% GDP growth. Japan is down. All of the European countries are down. So I would say this is a really bad time to be graduating from college. Fortunately, the people listening to this summit are not graduating from college. They might be graduating from high school, and they've got 3 or 4 years more to go. So I think things can't get worse, but they certainly can get better. I am not an economist. As an historian, I'm good at explaining the past. I don't have any intention of predicting the future. What I will say, though, is that the COVID vaccine, whenever it comes, will make an enormous difference. And I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just repeating what everybody else says. I think, though, that the Dutch universities have very good reputation. For those that are interested in business specifically, when you're thinking of business schools taught in English, there are some excellent ones. Bocconi University in Milan, of course, has a great reputation. But Erasmus University Rotterdam is practically synonymous. The Rotterdam School of Business, which is both undergraduate and postgraduate, is the core of EUR, Erasmus University Rotterdam. Having said that, I think it's so successful at business that it's often overlooked in that it has great programs in so many other fields as well. So I think the Netherlands gives you so many options compared to other universities, other countries in Europe, where there might be only a handful of English opportunities. So that's why I think the Netherlands should be first on your list of all of the countries where English is not the native language.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Just wondering, for students who are interested in postgraduate employment, would the UAS, University of Applied Sciences, make more sense for them?
Right, because those are hands-on courses, vocational courses. They're very much geared to the job market. Therefore, they adjust themselves to the job market if they predict that there's going to be great demand for a particular job in the near future. They'll expand opportunities at the University of Applied Science. If they think that there's not going to be much future use, then they would contract their openings. I would say that that you would probably not necessarily want to go to a University of Applied Science to get a job in the Netherlands. You'd want to use that education and then apply to English-speaking countries around the world after graduating from an English-speaking course. You graduate with at least 3 years worth of academic training, but also with 1 year's worth of business experience in industry. And so that would make you more employable. However, the majority of the courses are designed for working in the Netherlands and therefore taught in Dutch. I should also point out that some of the fields at Dutch universities are offered only in Dutch simply by the nature of the business. Psychotherapy, counseling, religion courses, physiotherapy. Some of the specialties in medicine are only offered in Dutch because they are designed specifically to fill positions in the Netherlands. And obviously psychotherapy is something that people always do in their first language. So that would not be, you wouldn't be applying to, you wouldn't be able to find an English course in those areas.
All right. I have a question pertaining to the university colleges. Since they follow the liberal arts model, do students apply into a major at the start, or?
Right. The university colleges would be similar to their counterparts in the United States and Canada, which is what they're based on, in that you apply to the university college. You might write your application essay about the subjects that you're interested in, but you wouldn't be applying to a specific major. And you take a variety of courses. It's designed to be a holistic education. And then you can then specialize. So you'll end up with a major, but for a student who doesn't know exactly what he or she wants to study, then that's a better choice than applying to a research university, or for example, a university in England or Wales or Northern Ireland, where you have to choose just one subject. So I would say that it's that it has the advantages of the North American flexibility, while in a country that has a lot of other advantages.
Right. Okay. We have another question in the chat. Hi, sir. Thank you for the amazing presentation. I have a question here. I understand that certain countries in Europe, Germany, for example, give tuition fee exemption to Malaysian students with certain criteria. May I know if anything of such is available for studying in the Netherlands?
Thank you very much. I wish I could answer that, and I can't, so I'll admit my ignorance right away. What I will say is that when Joey sends you the websites, there is one which is Grant Finder for available scholarships, including some for non-Dutch students, and that might very well have it. And then in addition, in the FAQ page for Duo NL, which is tuition fees and student grants, I think that would be the place to get that. Otherwise, though, I'm afraid I'm not. I don't have that specific knowledge. But thank you for the implicit compliment.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? If not, we will close off the session. Glenn, do you have any final advice for our audience here?
Well, my general advice for everybody, unfortunately, is not possible. And that is go and visit the university, go and visit the country before you go there. However, there are so many virtual opportunities now. And Japanese universities sometimes are one step behind their North American counterparts, but they're taking full advantage of this. The Dutch universities and others in Europe are as well. So I would say take every advantage of virtual campus tours, webinars, virtual university fairs. If any of you attend a school that is a member of the Council of International Schools, CIS is organizing virtual college fairs in September and October, that are geographically based. And so there's one in late September for all of East Asia. There's another one in early October for Western Europe. And that would give you the opportunity to visit lots of colleges. Otherwise, just Google the name of a Dutch city and you'll find the university that's in it, or go to the website that Joey's going to pass on to you, and then you can find the university website. You can then find a virtual campus tour, and that's the next best thing to going there. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you,
Thank you,
to the
Joey.
audience for your participation and for your questions. We will be posting a link in the chat box now, so please fill up the survey. A couple of minutes. We'll leave the link up for a couple of minutes. For the audience here, if you're interested, come back at 3 p.m. KL time, 4 p.m. In Japan, if you're watching from Japan. Our next session is by Sophie Lutz talking about pursuing an engineering degree taught in English at a Japanese university.
And Sophie is wonderful.
All right, so
Yes.
we'll see you back here in an hour and a half. Thank you very much and see you later.
Thank you.
Bye.